site. We welcome you to revisit the content yourself and share it with your colleagues. Since we still have a few people logging on, let me quickly take a minute here to tell you a little about ASEI. The American Society of Engineers of Indian origin is an organization of engineers and technical professionals that was established in 1983 in Michigan, and it's a non-profit organization. Since its inception, ASEI has strived to institute a channel of communication between technical organizations within the United States and abroad, lending a hand to the charitable organizations and provide assistance to engineering students at the local and national levels. Of course, besides organizing monthly networking events, which now have started becoming weekly because we can do the webinar. So moving to the webinar, today's webinar is business continuity during the pandemic. Now, given the situation, we would have wanted the COVID-19 to end up in 2019 itself, but unfortunately, like an unwanted guest, it just lingers on in our lives. But every downturn creates challenges, and out of these come innovations. Each business has had to determine its own path to business continuity. Big or small, corporations, startups, education or transportation, healthcare or consulting, what are the companies and institutions doing that has allowed them to have business continuity? And can their mantras be adopted by other companies that are trying to determine what they need to do? So in a talk, Dr. Vandana Mangal will discuss her work and analysis on sector disruptions and business continuity and take you through some examples. Her colleagues, Sarala, Peachimuthu, and Sayali, Kasture will join Vandana and share their experiences in the different sectors they work in. I just hope I pronounce their names right. So let me talk a little about them. So Dr. Vandana Mangal teaches management classes at UCLA and consults on innovation and edtech for higher education. She did her engineering from Punjab Engineering College, and her PhD comes from Carnegie Mellon University. She then, her corporate experiences started with Tata Group, AE Business Solutions Consulting, and Intel Corp. Teaching, research, and academic leadership took her away to University of Wisconsin-Madison, University of Wisconsin-Platteville, UCLA Anderson School of Management. Consulting and teaching gave her experience in Pepperdine Graziado Business School, sorry for the pronunciation, UCLA School of Engineering. That was Vandana Mangal. Too much to digest, but she did it all in this life, and she has so much more. So joining her will be Sarala Peachimuthu. She's the manager strategy and consulting at Accenture. She did her engineering in College of Technology in India, then MBA from UCLA Anderson School of Management. Her specialization includes tech management, global management, and entrepreneurship. Consulting and corporate experience-wise, she started off, I think, with Tech Mahindra, Satyam Consulting, then went to independent technology consulting, then moved on to public sectors with Department of Children and Family Services and Department of Health Services. And then now she's at Accenture and doing a lot of strategy and consulting. The third person, who's a very vibrant person, is the Senior Product Management Manager at Adobe. She did her electronics engineering in University of Pune, and she's an MBA from UCLA Anderson School of Management as well. Her corporate experiences include Eaton Corporation, where she did work in engineering, and she was looking after APAC, business planning and strategy, both for India and China. Then she moved off to EcoBuddy, She was an entrepreneurial, she did her entrepreneurial venture in the San Francisco Bay Area, and then finally moved on to Adobe Corporation as a product manager. Currently, she's the senior PM in the newly established Creative Cloud for Education team. Over to you, Vandana.
Thanks, Vatsala.
I hope I did a little justice for all that you all have achieved. Can you get to the share screen?
Getting there. Share screen. Okay. All right, I have it now.
Great.
Vatsala, thank you so much for this opportunity for all of us, and also for this kind introduction. It's been such a pleasure connecting with you, learning about ASEI, and also as Sarala and Sayali worked with you, and now Lalita on this. We're looking forward to this opportunity to share some of the work that I've done, and also my colleagues in their own domains, the impact that they've made. I am going to start out with setting up my screen and a little bit here on, okay, starting out with good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. I know members are located in all parts of the world. So it's great to have you here with us. I want to start out on a down note, and I want to start out with financial downturns have been part of our lives. I myself have been through several financial downturns in the United States. One, when I had just come into this country, I was still working on my PhD at Carnegie Mellon University, had barely been here a year when the stock market crash happened. That was in 1987. After that, I've been through several different downturns. I was in the Silicon Valley working at Intel when the tech bubble burst, and I was in Los Angeles, believe it or not, trying to buy a house when the mortgage crisis and the financial crisis happened in the primary and secondary markets. And this downturn, though, it's a little bit different. It's a little bit different because the economy had been doing well for the last 12 years. In fact, we were surprised because usually it's a 10-year cycle. And then the pandemic happened. With COVID, it brought about, really within a matter of a few days, work from home, stay-at-home orders, social distancing. It's new for us. This is a worldwide crisis. It almost feels like World War III by some accounts, but we are all on the same side. We are all trying to solve this problem together. But what that has resulted in is the financial crisis during this time. And so because of these two together now, we are experiencing something new. We are trying to figure out how do we survive and come out of this. What I've tried to do is, as I think through sector disruptions that are happening, I've sort of put them into four categories. One, let's start with the lower bottom side. This looks at sectors that were already disrupting. They were already weak before this even happened. And retail falls smack bang in this area. The retail sector with e-commerce has been struggling. Mall traffic has gone down. 2019 was a brutal year for retail, and 2020 was expected to be equally brutal. And this was before COVID. So this sector has seen a large number of bankruptcies, store closings, and it ranges across high-end retailers like Neiman Marcus and Brooks Brothers to J. Crew and Loft and JCPenney. The reasons may be different. At the high end, consumers are looking for additional value that these retailers can add. So, for instance, what Nordstrom has done, and they started this service before COVID, was personal stylists. So in Beverly Hills and in West Los Angeles, they've opened special stores where you can make appointments and go meet with personal stylists. And what they've done during COVID is they've taken styling, personal styling, to virtual. So you can schedule virtual appointments with stylists. On the other hand, JCPenney's a company that has been struggling for a while. They've been trying to find who their differentiated customer is, who their prime customer is. So this sector has been going through a lot of transitions, but they happened even before COVID started out. So that's one. Let's move to the bottom left side, where these are sectors that were doing really well before COVID. So let's talk about the economy was good. So we were all spending money in eating out. We were spending money in entertaining ourselves. So we were going to huge music festivals, to sports festivals, to performing arts. We were also working out. So we had joined gyms, and we were also traveling. Then comes COVID. Well, we are required to do social distancing and we have to stay at home. Guess what? All of these sectors are significantly impacted. We cannot go out to eat at restaurants, bars, forget about it. Entertainment, big venues, that is going to be difficult even after we get out of COVID, getting 1,000 people together. Let's also throw in Indian weddings there, by the way. I mean, so many weddings were planned for this year and everything had to be postponed. So that's also festivals, gyms, 24-hour fitness, Gold's Gym are in trouble. And let's talk about travel. Airlines, both domestic as well as international. Several have declared bankruptcy. Hospitality has laid off or furloughed a large number of people. Even Airbnb, which came out of the previous downturn, has a new model, is trying to figure out how do they survive. So that's the second area. Let's move up to the top right, where these are some of the sectors for which COVID has actually created a growth opportunity. And these are sectors, well, we are all at home, so we've got to eat. So let's get grocery. Let's also get all kinds of fancy grocery, but let's get it delivered home. So companies like Instacart and others are doing really well. They've been growing exponentially. In fact, there have been acquisitions in markets such as Uber Eats, where they acquired Postmates. So there's a movement there as well. So that's those companies. Then comes tech. Tech as a sector has been used to, it's more conducive to working from home, but tech is also what is making us survive. It's making us work. And that's why, especially some components of it, like video conferencing with Zooms, Blue Jeans, Microsoft Teams, all of these are doing great. Let's also add, what are we doing while we are at home and eating? Two more things. One that we're doing is entertaining ourselves. Well, we are streaming content from Netflix, one. And two, we want to work out. So some of us have gone and purchased these Peloton treadmills and bikes, and we have these subscriptions and we are working out. Apple has also got into this market with their Apple One, and they also made the announcement to be offering this service. So this is another market that's growing, that's changing. So this is number 3. Let's go to number 4, which is at top on the left-hand side. These are sectors that are, in spite of work from home, they require being in the same environment. They require immersive experiences, but they are able to manage their business continuity. And we'll talk about that a little bit. Okay, a little bit of an introduction and why I'm equipped to be talking to you today, and why I'm equipped to be sharing my experiences and work with you today. One, I joined UCLA just after the tech bubble had burst to work on a project called BIT, Business and Information Technologies. In this project, we looked at how technology is impacting business practices over time and across the world. We grew this project to 21 partners in 17 countries. We published a lot of papers, and these are 4 books that we published. But the interesting part about this study has been we took sector value chains and we studied how they were changing with the adoption of new technologies. So let's take publishing, which was the first sector that was disrupting in the US that we studied. Most of us used to consume our news in print once a day. So we would read the newspaper either in the morning or at night. Today, most of us use the smartphone. Not all of us, but most of us use this device to consume our news, and it's almost in near real time. Needless to say, the publishing sector has disrupted significantly, and it has been for the last 2 decades. Then came music. You may remember MySpace and Napster, and we had the ability to download music for free from using this peer-to-peer concept. I still remember at UCLA Anderson having the music bigwigs sitting there and racking their brains as to how do they solve this problem. They were completely blindsided. It was not until Steve Jobs formed this partnership and brought in monetization of with iTunes that music stabilized. And of course, video learned from them, and that sector sort of has come into its own over the years. Now, while I continue to study several sectors, you'll find many of it in my publications. In the meantime, I was asked by UCLA Anderson's leadership to create and launch a technology leadership certificate. And this was to prepare students, MBA students with business backgrounds to work in a digitally transforming world, whatever sector they may be working in, whether it's healthcare, whether it's music, entertainment, whether it's education, retail, even finance and law. There were students I had who were working in finance, of course, but also fashion, and they wanted to transition into tech. So this program grew. We started it with 68 students. It grew significantly in terms of scale and scope. The number of enrollments went up tenfold to about 700 students a year from the 68 a year that we'd started with. And we grew it by bringing in not just courses and workshops, but what we also did was launched big showcase events like an annual big data event, also formed a partnership with CES, the Consumer Electronics Show, held CES at Anderson every year. And this grew to also help us raise money. So we were able to raise $15 million. And what started out as a small niche program at UCLA Anderson grew into this permanently endowed Eastern Technology Management Center. Continue to look at different sectors and how they were disrupting, not from a research perspective, but from a student and learning perspective. So transportation has been one of the sectors that I have been studying. And the other reason behind that also is transportation, the new transportation, a lot of it has been based in LA. So it's been really interesting as I started with looking at a Tesla and driving a Tesla in terms of the innovation that this sector was bringing in. And there were 4 main areas in which this new transportation has been happening. Let's start with electrification. Tesla, of course, has been the leader, but the big OEMs have also been, they also have their own products. Second is the ride sharing, big time with Uber and Lyft and other players. Third is solving the first mile, last mile problem. This I came across when I saw scooters, e-scooters at UCLA on the UCLA campus, and was surprised to learn that these work through the app. They could be picked up anywhere and they could be dropped off anywhere. And they could help us get from one place to the other, not just on campus, but also across the entire city. So, and guess what? It was founded by, in our very own backyard in Silicon Beach in Santa Monica, by a company called Bird. And the founder of the company he had experience working at leadership in Lyft as well as Uber. So that's the third one. And the fourth is all of this leading to autonomous vehicles, self-driving cars. I used to go to drop my son at Carnegie Mellon when he was studying there in Pittsburgh. And the kind of picture that you see here, I saw those live, driving around town with Uber's partnership with Volvo while they were testing out the self-driving cars. Of course, there are a ton of others. This is all with what's been happening in the transportation sector. Let's take it a bit further to how about transporting goods. So a lot of work is being done here. One, Kiwi's been working in, if you're on the Berkeley campus and you want food delivered to your office, there's a little sort of robot cart which will deliver it to your office from any of the restaurants on campus. Second, there's delivery of goods. So Neuro, which is a company in one of our Anderson alums work, Dan Mitchell, it has robo-vans, which are focused on delivery in person. This whole sector really has been transforming. There's a ton of companies, and what's been happening during this time when COVID has come about. I have to say each sort of area within this is figuring out how they survive. So for example, Bird with the restrictions about contact, e-scooters business went down completely. So Bird has now started selling their e-scooters in addition to leasing their e-scooters. That's one. The second is the market in ride sharing has been going down. People have been not feeling as comfortable with Uber and Lyft. And so what they are doing is the second, the used car market. The used car market has actually gone up significantly. That's two. Third, the car rental market had been going down. Hertz declared bankruptcy during COVID. And this was actually coming with Zipcar first coming out, but then newer models of car rentals. There's the Turo.com that I use to rent a car. It's a peer-to-peer sharing. So it's a marketplace where you can you can sign up for your car to be leased, or you can lease a car. They do a really good job. There's also Fair.com, which does a subscription-based sharing. But there's autonomous vehicles. There's a company called Zoom, XOOM, which I had the opportunity to visit, based in Silicon Valley and Palo Alto, I believe. And so they got acquired by Amazon. This is just to say that each company within this transportation sector, each company and each mini sector in this is dealing with in their own way. Cruise, for instance, which is GM's Cruise, has cut down their workforce by 8%, and they are growing the engineering portion. Lyft is doing research. Uber is spread more into their Uber Eats, so they're doing more of the delivery because their passenger traffic is down. So that's about business continuity on transportation. Moving on to the last segment, higher ed, which is where I come from. So would like to talk a little bit about that. Vatsala, tell me how much time I have.
Keep going, Vandana.
Okay. Give me a thumbs down when you're ready to shoo me off, okay? All right, a few more minutes. So this is higher education. Higher education is a sector which is, while it is talked about in terms of what brand and what degree, what institution are we going. So for example, my MBA is from Harvard. So it's the brand of the institution and the degree are major focus issues or major focus areas. What this COVID has taught us is really, there are other things that are very important to people when they shell out the huge sums of money for tuitions and for everything else. And those include this immersive experience, being on campus, interfacing with building relationships with their peers, interfacing with faculty, learning from these people who are building new intellectual capital, who are world renowned, who are Nobel Prize winners. And on top of that, also having that whole experience of staying in a dorm, having leadership opportunities, attending events. For example, Bill Clinton spoke on campus. So Students are craving this whole immersive experience, not just the degree and the brand. Students and parents, I would like to say, when they talk about higher ed education. This is what the pandemic has taught us. And how has it taught us that? By unprecedented number of students, freshmen especially, who've chosen to take gap years this year. Harvard, which usually encourages its admits to take a year off, this year has seen 20% of their students take a gap year, 3 times more than normal. MIT, the number is 8%. It's usually 1%. In fact, by some accounts, about as many as 40% of people are saying, our students are saying they are looking at deferring the admission by a year. So that has brought a new learning to what people are looking for when they think about an on-campus experience. They truly think of it as an immersive experience. Things have been, innovations have been coming in. Higher ed is this big gorilla with this huge, in public institutions, huge land grants. There are the Ivies, there are public institutions, there are smaller private schools, liberal arts schools, but innovations have been coming in higher ed. And the biggest one came about a decade ago with MOOCs. Those started out with Salu Khan's Khan Academy, but Stanford's faculty offered a hugely attended course free online. And that got faculty worried in terms of, is it going to be taking a job away? Is higher ed going to be disrupted now? It did not. There were a few years, 2 or 3 years, when innovations happened and there was some concern. But it did not happen because students did not stay on in these classes, and they did not come back the next year. So higher ed continues chugging along. It's still the big gorilla. In my classes, I brought in video conferencing, I brought in recorded lectures. I have to tell you, faculty hesitated about those. They believed that they would not be able to get that same engaging, immersive experience to their students that they were able to do in class. And seeing what's happening today, students believe it as well. Pepperdine, which is Grad Studio Business School, still working, Vatsal, I'm still working on Grad Studio and what's the best way to say it. It's a challenge that everybody has, but they've been looking at different types of innovative models. There's online, hybrid, also blended, which is the flipped classroom, combining async with asynchronous with synchronous. And then comes COVID. And guess what? In a matter of a few days to a matter of a couple of weeks, every faculty in the United States has to move their classes which were prepared for teaching on ground to online. No choice. So this is a model that is a good one to look at. In the short term, everybody had to teach in the spring. These classes were created for on ground. All of a sudden, they had to be taught in terms of lectures online. They had to be, the faculty had to engage students. They also had to test students. They also had to assess students. This has not been done before. Faculty, oftentimes, especially if they're more senior, may not have as much experience with technology as the younger students who are digital natives. And so therefore they ran into technical problems. There were also ethical issues, like there were some of our students who did not have access to the internet or to even laptops. There was some Zoom bombing. There were also personal issues. Faculty and students with young kids at home were trying to balance their personal as well as their work lives. So all of this continued. And in the spring, universities allowed students to have a choice of whether they wanted to take a pass or a fail grade, or if they wanted to continue. Come summer, universities work through what do we do online? Do we do in person? Most of the private schools surveyed their students, and guess what? By a huge majority, students wanted to come back to campus. They were willing to take the risk and come back to campus. So schools made announcements, especially the privates made announcements of, we will be opening in the fall. And then there were several issues that happened. In Southern California, cases spiked, so they were not given permission. International policies changed, and there was a little bit of a time when the universities got together and they sued the government. Also, students and parents started feeling that I'm paying a tuition anywhere, at least an average of $33,000, but anywhere from really $15,000 to as much as $60,000 in tuition per year, and all I'm getting is a link. Do I want to do this? So they started suing their institutions. And so some of the institutions like Princeton and Johns Hopkins decided to reduce the tuitions by small amounts, 10%. Most universities did not increase their tuitions, and some decided to give more for less. So all of these changes started happening till we got into fall. And here we are in the fall, where most universities are now in a mode where they are offering online classes because of the safety issues. Let me just look at the time. Okay, let's go through really fast because I think I've taken up too much of my time. So 2 points I want to make here. One is, in the short term, they're trying to figure out business continuity. So the main thing they're trying to figure out is, how do we balance safety with learning? And the second thing that I believe universities have an opportunity for, because this sector is now being disrupted, is how do we survive and thrive during this time? And if you look at all of these details here, I just want to mention one thing. What universities need to figure out is, what are the new revenue sources that they can generate? So let's look at long term. This is my last slide. What do universities have opportunities for in the long term? What is happening is, the university is made of research, it's made of teaching, and it's made of professional development, EQ as well as IQ. And what is happening, what is an opportunity for us in the long term, is to unbundle higher education. And we can do it in several different ways. Let me leave you with just 2 points here. One is, universities need to be exploring different business models. How do they teach? Is the same immersive experience the right business model for everybody? And is the same pricing structure right for everybody? That is one part of it. And the second is, if you look to the column on your right, what should they be teaching and what should they be offering? So I've thrown in a few things here. One is personalized education. Let people pick what they want to learn and build a salad bar, as opposed to, this is the dinner menu and this is all you're going to get. No, you have a salad bar you can pick. And also stack credentials. I'm going to come in, I'm going to take this certificate, I'm going to test drive this program. If I like it, I'm going to take one more certificate, and I have the ability to build out my own degree. So I'm going to leave you with these thought-provoking ideas, where in the short term, there's business continuity. These are problems, these are things that need to be done, universities are doing. And in the long term, there's lots of opportunities for higher ed. And most higher ed leaders are thinking, whenever I talk to them, they're all making their new strategic plans. Thank you for listening to me, and look forward to hearing from Sayali and Sarala as they talk about their sectors. Thanks, Vatsala.
Thank you, Vandana. All I can say is, back when I knew you in school, you were an inspiration and you still are. So moving on to Sarala. Go ahead, Sarala.
Hi, Vatsala, and hi, everybody. Welcome. So, let me just jump into it. Today's topic is business continuity during a pandemic. So my experience has been in the health and public sector for the past 10 years. So, I've chosen to give, I would like to share my perspectives on business continuity in that industry. Next slide, Vatsala. So just to give an introduction, right, what is business continuity? So it is basically the ability to continue operations and provide your services and products during and after a pandemic or any disaster, right? Like this can be natural disasters or man-made disasters. So right now we are in the middle of a pandemic. So next slide, please. So let me start with giving a very high level overview on how the COVID has affected the health and the public sector. So both these industries, right, health and public sector, they've had a lot of challenges even pre-COVID. What COVID did was just intensify and bring out those challenges into the limelight. Also, we saw a lot of like societal issues and leadership issues that were, that were brought into the limelight as well. Both the industries, their operational, resilience was tested, was put to a heavy test. And what came out as a result was that new business models and new operating models were adopted for business. Okay, cool. So let's history. So I picked the top 3 challenges. Vatsala, can you go back to the previous slide? Cool. No, then the next one, the health industry.
This one?
Yes, perfect. So what I've done is I've just picked top 3 challenges, and would like to walk through what was the scenario pre-COVID, and how did COVID impact those operations, and what were the business continuity measures that they took, and then I'll look into the future as well. So the first one was labor shortage. The health industry was known for a shortage of clinicians and like nurses, even pre-COVID. With the electronic health record, 70% of physicians complained of physical and mental stress. There was a lot of manual processes, even with the electronic health record system. What COVID did was, it just intensified the workload, and there was a lot of demand for nurses, as you know. Now it's obvious. There was like a 20 times increase in demand for nurses. So what we saw, to ensure business continuity, this industry slowly adopted to automation of all the manual processes. So we saw an increase in, like adopting robotic process automations, basically to automate very menial repeatable tasks, like, moving data from one system to another system and things like that. This, we heard, drastically reduced the workload for the hospital staff. In one case, we heard it saved like 2 hours a day for every nurse in a hospital. So which is a great, which is a big deal. Post-COVID, what I personally think is that this workflow automation is going to just drastically increase. People will have to be reskilled, the workforce will have to be reskilled, and they'll have to be moved around and, like assigned to tasks which will value the human potential. Right? And also this industry has to do this because they have to recoup from all the revenue loss that they had to encounter during this period. Instead of hiring more workforce, more staff, they could use this automation. It will be a one-time investment, and like automate all the tasks. So the next challenge was with the care delivery model. We know that traditionally, we go to the hospital, we go face-to-face visit the doctors. The virtual delivery mode was very, very rare. It was like 1 in 20 visits were virtual visits. Also, an Accenture study revealed that medical device usage actually dropped from 48% in 2018 to 35% in 2020. And the reasons that were cited was, data security concerns, privacy issues, and also a lack of encouragement and, guidance from hospital staff to integrate the data, like the personal medical device data, with the electronic health record system. Like you are, like, you have your Fitbit or your Apple Health, and you're monitoring on your own, and there is no integration with the electronic health record. So there was lack of like interest as well. Now what happened with COVID is high priority is given to the COVID cases, right? Basically one is to, that's obviously high priority, and the other one is there's a lot of PPE shortage as well. And so because of these reasons, both consumers and the hospital staff have started encouraging the use of telemedicine and virtual care. So what we are seeing right now is to ensure business continuity, there's been like in a lot of physicians, more than 48% of the physicians have started using telemedicine. There is like 15 to 20 times increase in virtual visit volume. In fact, even I myself used telemedicine during the COVID time. Uh, Moving forward, they are saying that telemedicine will stay, but at the same time, we are also seeing a drop in the usage of telehealth. But what I think is it might not go to the pre-COVID levels, but at least it will stay there. It will be like, instead of 1 in 20 visits for telemedicine, it's going to be like 1 in 3 visits will be telemedicine. And also we are going to be seeing a lot of like on a mixed mode delivery model demand for mixed mode delivery, which is like, even in home chat, contact a physician through via chat and remote patient monitoring, etc. And last but not the least is the digital capability of this industry. Traditionally, the health industry has been known to be a very slow adopter of technology and digital tools. One of the reasons being data privacy, the HIPAA and regulations and things like that. Most of these industries had on-prem data centers with limited scalability, a lot of data silos from different systems, and also had a lot of data quality issues. When COVID struck, it really tested them big time. There was a sudden increase in patient volume, sudden demand for virtual care, a lot of demand for tracking the patient health data, like COVID data, tracking, forecasting, and things like that. So I heard like some of the public sector, like health, like Department of Health, they opened like military style command centers. But also what we saw was an acceleration to adopting cloud technology and using and leveraging cloud for many of their tech solutions. Moving forward, what I'm seeing is like this health cloud market is going to, is grow by like around 51 billion by 2024. We are going to be having a lot more connected experience when, with more remote monitoring and medical device connectivity as well. So quickly jumping into the public sector, how are we doing with time, Vatsala?
5 more minutes. Good enough.
5 more minutes. All right. I'll just run by this quickly. For public sector, I've chosen 3 challenges, which is like meeting the citizens' needs. Right now, everybody's eye is on the public sector. There's never been a time where everybody is looking up to the government for solutions. And they are aware of this. And, they have met the response by providing us with contact center, like a lot of, adopting quickly to digital tools like contact center automation, contact tracing, virtual learning, and things like that. The leadership knows that, the proper communication and being transparent with the data that they get on the COVID, is the only way to get the trust of their constituents. So moving forward, we'll be seeing a lot of, adoption, acceleration to smart cities and adoption of like, innovative communication channels like social media listening and two-way communication channels with the public, just to gain the trust of their citizens. With respect to operations of the public sector and service delivery, it has always been face-to-face, mostly face-to-face, and remote work was considered as a luxury for the employees in the public sector. With COVID, they had to adopt to video conferencing for service delivery, and remote work for the employees became essential. It's no longer a luxury. They are also adopting to automation using of RPA and automation tools, and also moving into cloud as well. Supply chain issues, we all knew what happened, at the beginning. There was a lack of, local and diversified supply chain for essential products, and also there was a lack of stockpiling. So during COVID, we saw that the private sector jumped in and helped us a lot with, the ventilators and like hand sanitizers and the masks and things like that. So all this happened because the public sector basically relaxed their complex processes to work with the private sector. So moving forward, in order to increase more collaboration, we will want to see that kind of relaxing of bureaucratic procedures, to work with the private sector. So next slide, please. The previous slide. So just to finalize my summary, what COVID did was bring out all our strengths as well as our weaknesses. And we saw new norms in social behavior and in business and everything. We also learned that every business is now becoming a technology business and also a healthcare business. So my personal opinion is that we should not let this crisis go a waste. We need to take these learnings and use this as a momentum to make meaningful and lasting transformations using technology, which has been come out as a winner in all of this, enabling business continuity. So thank you all, and thank you for the opportunity, and moving on to Sayali.
Thank you, Sarala, for taking us on some examples that are day-to-day life now. And sorry for the mess up of slides, but I kept pressing enter, just didn't move. So thank you, Sarala. Moving on to Sayali.
Hey, yeah, thanks, Vatsala. How much time do I have? 10 minutes?
You have around 10 minutes, yeah.
Okay, because I want to leave some time for Q&A at the end.
Sure.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to hopefully try to race through my slides real quick and still cover what I have. Thanks all for sticking around and your time today. Like Vandana and Sarala mentioned, these are challenging times for everyone, and especially for EdTech. If you could go to the next slide, please. I just want to take a minute to call out the impact that we've really seen on education in general because of the pandemic. About 1.6 billion learners worldwide have been impacted, and these are across 190 countries. 94% of the global student population, pretty much, majority more than that, like close to 100% is impacted severely. And as you can imagine, because of inequities that exist, 99% of the student population in low to middle income countries have been impacted because of schools closing, governments in countries not having plans about reopening, and enabling schools to do a better job in supporting learning in general. So the impact of this has been huge on education. I'm going to talk about the top 3 challenges that we have seen in education. If you could go to the next slide, please. So the first one, you probably, if there are parents in the room today, you've already seen and heard this, but there has been a sudden switch to remote learning and these hybrid learning models. These are really heavy terms that are thrown around very casually and easily, but the schools, teachers and students are not prepared for it. These are not the regular tech savvy people, who are on their devices every single day using it for their work. They operate in a very physical environment, which is not as tech savvy, and their comfort levels are low. What has impacted teachers and students a lot is there's no infrastructure and even funds from the schools to support them during this really hard transition. I read somewhere that less than 1% of the federal funds are given to public schools. Even before COVID, these schools are struggling with so many other challenges. Like, this has just basically put more pressure on them to even do something meaningful for educators and students in the class. The next one, like I said, we generally categorize teachers into 3 types. One is the reluctant type, the second is the seeking, and the third one is the one that are willing. So they're like they're early adopters and teachers who are generally more tech savvy, but a majority of the teachers are not, and they are not prepared for these new tools and processes that they have to adopt to. And if teachers, they're already overworked, and we've added more things on top of that, and we expect them to learn those tools and support students who, mind you, especially the younger ones, are struggling even in a physical setup with teachers around them. So that's a huge challenge. And then the third one is just an interruption to conventional schooling. There's a lot of processes and techniques and things that teachers use in a physical setup. They can give more attention to students, for example. That is just, it's hard, not to say impossible, for that to suddenly switch to a virtual setup that no one's really used to. And one other point I wanted to make on this was IT admins, generally the ratio of IT admins to students or schools is 1:127. So even before COVID, like it's such a valuable resource that post COVID, they're stretched further, and they just can't scale and support. So like, you have these entire schools and districts that are literally without learning for long periods of time because they don't have any support and they can't even expect to get any. So that's a big impact. And then the second challenge is just the change in teacher-student interaction and relationships. All of us don't realize this, and a lot of teachers are voicing this, but a teacher-student relationship is so core to learning. And yes, technology is awesome. I love it. I personally believe it's like the thing that can, help us solve every problem in the world. But we are yet to reach this level where it matches, the physical connection that can form between people, and it especially impacts like the teacher-student bond. That is just hard for teachers to mimic in a virtual classroom setup. The other thing also is low student engagement. Not having a child physically being in the classroom has resulted in low student engagement. Like students turn their videos off, they walk off, like, they're not as engaged, involved. It's hard for teachers to moderate a classroom because, especially the younger kids, they'll turn their mic on and off and like speak over one another. It's just, I mean, it's fun for me to watch as an outsider, but for the teacher, it's not, because they're really struggling, to get started with their lessons. And then the last point is, there are typically students that have more needs than, like the median or like the average student in the classroom. In a physical setup, like, the teachers engage the well-performing students while they go and attend to these other, slightly more needy kids in the class. They are unable to do that in the classroom setup. And just this gap between them and the student is just impacting student outcomes in that engagement. And then if you could go to the next slide, please. And the last one, I think there are inequities, as we know, everywhere, and there are in education, and they have just become so much more prominent with, COVID, because the access to resources is just inequitable. Like there are entire, like I was saying, schools that don't have this one-to-one devices that, kids from, let's say, better schools or more funded schools get. They are like, these are kids that go to schools that have zero devices. Even some of the better off average schools, they don't have one-to-one devices and they have shared licenses. So what that basically means is they no longer have access to all of these subscription services that they were using before COVID. And it's like an abrupt end to things that they were learning. And then the disadvantaged students, like I mentioned before, they're further lagging behind, and it's actually causing a lot of stress to teachers, parents, and students alike. So given this, these host of challenges, there are kind of three things that, as a person in the education technology industry, we're trying to see how we can help make things better. So Vatsala, if you could go to the next one. So in order to ensure business continuity, the one after that. Yeah. So in order to ensure that there's business continuity and like making sure that, we can support our target market in these really trying times for them, I think the first one is being able to support employee wellness and engagement. This is something that applies across industries. So this is not just like anything specific for EdTech, but I think it's more important given that EdTech itself is not a high revenue generating business, and it's been impacted even more with the current situation. Like schools that are already understaffed, low on funds, you cannot expect them, to pay up or even sign up or renew their subscriptions for services they had been using. So in these times, when your revenue is going to be impacted, it's more important than ever to retain your employees and make sure that they are well engaged and dedicated and can continue to support in these times of uncertainty. And the second thing here also is, even though work from home is something that works well in the software setup, it's still resulting in a lot of burnout and office fatigue. So trying to encourage virtual team building, getting the team together, like trying to build empathy for customer problems, and trying to remain driven in solving these problems is something that's needed. And then the second thing, there's a famous line that with every opportunity or challenge, with every challenge there's opportunity. And it's also true about this pandemic. I think the businesses that are going to be successful and like sustain and come out of this stronger are the ones that can adapt their strategy to continue to stay relevant in these trying times. So very, very important. I guess the first, sorry, if you could go to the first one. So I guess the first one is focusing on what is most critical for the users, and all of these challenges that, I shared with you, it's important to understand them and then ruthlessly trying to prioritize that to, get something done. Like if you try to do too much, you're not going to get anything done well, and it's not really going to help your end customers. So that's important. And I think given this amount of uncertainty, really trying to build a culture of failing fast and building with the customers. So I can speak for Adobe because I work there, that, we are trying to engage almost daily and very regularly with all of these teachers, IT admins, schools, and basically trying to be there for them and telling them, hey, you know what, these are uncertain times. We know as much as you do. Let's try to work on this together, and, trying to be there for them and build with them. So I think like that's very important to still remain relevant. Some of the good things that have come out of this is, with a switch to remote learning, there's much faster adoption of virtual tools than we had anticipated in the past. Like these are things that we earlier used to ask teachers to adopt. Now they are coming to us, to IT admins, to curriculum and tech coaches, and they're like, hey, like we need all of these tools. What is most relevant? How can you help us get started? That's great opportunity. There's also tons of opportunity to jump into this, this virtual tool kind of madness that's happening around, and try to make sure that they are more, they have all of the privacy and safety measures in place so they can be used in education. There's also opportunity to build for lower end devices and lower bandwidth, which is something that we're seeing these kids and teachers having. I'll skip to the last slide in the interest of time. But sorry, are you still sharing? For some reason, I just...
Yeah, capitalizing on opportunities. That's
okay.
The one.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's the right one. Yeah, so basically there are tons of companies that you'll see have adapted and like doing a lot of things. So partnering with them and trying to make sure that you can still solve customer needs. A lot of governments are launching policies and initiatives that you can start engaging with earlier and trying to be a part of it. So India just launched a new education policy. Japan announced a Giga initiative. UK has announced like that it'll start providing public schools with devices and connectivity support, to help the kids really start using technology in classrooms. So yeah, there's tons of opportunity that we can capitalize on, and we have 1 minute. But appreciate you guys, for sticking around and your time, and hopefully this was helpful.
Thank you, Vandana, Sarala, Sayali. It was such an interesting talk, and it covered so much, so many sectors. So quickly jumping on to the question and answer session. Muthu, can you take that?
Yeah, we have a couple of questions. Let's start with them. We'll go in that order of the presenters. So this one for you, Vandana. How can we plan to stay relevant for the workforce of the future?
Yes, so this is a question that has been coming up again and again over the last few years, and especially it has become critical during COVID, where things have changed from before. But as I've been talking to my MBA students over the years, and more so to leaders in the industry, people who've become directors, vice presidents, senior leadership, what they've been telling me, Muthu, often is that I am an expert in my field, whether it be healthcare or retail or technology, but where do I do not feel that I am as equipped to be able to work in today's environment as some of my younger colleagues. So those who are graduating today come up equipped with, I mentioned digital transformation, they come equipped with the new technologies, with the new ways of doing business, with the new ways of making life easier. I think both Sayali and Sarala also alluded to them, where there are all these virtual kinds of tools that have been available for a while to make our life easier and better. We have just not been using them. And especially relevant for people. So for example, Vice President in Warner Brothers, he mentioned to me that, I don't feel that I'm equipped to do my job as well because I don't understand technology so well. So what the conversations we're having is, well, so we need to believe in lifelong learning. So we do not want to stop learning as soon as we graduate out of school, whichever degree we decide to take on. And there are tons of options available today. Of course, there are the usual degrees. I come from higher ed, so I would talk for my PhDs and my MBAs and my master's degrees, but there are lots of other opportunities available. There are the edtech companies of the world, the Coursera's, the Udacities, there are those. There are also certificates offered by higher ed. The one that is of most interest to me is, and I believe that could be the direction of the future, is there are some of these edtech companies that are working together with universities to be able to offer joint programming. What does that do? It offers programs that are short. It gives you the choice with my salad bar example. You can pick and choose what you want to study, makes it economical, yet gets you the brand of the university. What can be better than that? So heading in the direction of lifelong learning, use all the means you have, and you can do it sitting from home if you like, have all the flexibility.
Thank you. Thank you. Like Satya Nadella from Microsoft said, one thing he did as soon as he joined was to make everybody in the company become lifelong learners. So it's a great advice. Thank you. So next one to you, Sarala. How is the digital divide being taken care of by both the public sector and the health industry?
The great question. So, we've been talking about how technology has enabled business continuity for both these sectors. But one thing to keep in mind, like coming from the public sector background, I always think like, okay, the community that the Department of Health Services or DCFS serves is a low-income community. They may not have access to all these technologies. So when we are talking about all these telemedicine and virtual collaboration tools and things like that, that's always in my mind, like how is this population being served? So I did a little bit of digging in, and I came to find out that like with respect to like the health industry, there's a lot of back end work going on, like with FCC. They are investing about like 200 million or something into telemedicine. So some of the initiatives have been into, encouraging digital literacy. They've been working with the state government, the federal and the local government to encourage more digital literacy and access to, computers and laptops and, mobile devices. They're working with hardware companies in order to, ensure that everybody has access to these technologies as well. And they're also looking into broadband internet availability. Currently, I'm hearing of talks with the internet service providers to provide cheap basic internet facility to be accessed by all. So these are some of the ways. The other thing is there are still some communities which cannot be reached out or reached to using technology. So for those cases, public sector really has to, keep that traditional, like they have to keep these multiple channels of service delivery open. One, they can use technology. The other one is they still have to keep these traditional channels, send their representatives, wear a mask and, maintain the distance, but still, you still need to reach out to those communities. So they'll have to work with a lot of, non-traditional partners in order to, come up with a solution for this digital divide problem.
Thank you, Sarala. We probably have one or two more, but at least going with the flow. The third one to Sayali. The question is, the pandemic created a lot of disruption for learning. Is there any positive impact due to it? You're on mute, Sayali.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I was like, yes, I know we've been talking so much about the challenges, all of the negative, and just like a ray of hope in all of this. There's definitely positive that's coming out of it. And just to reinforce some of the things that I said earlier, I guess the most important thing is we are just seeing a faster adoption of tools and technology by teachers and students. That's going to help in two ways. One, teachers can basically start, delegating some of the tasks to technology that they no longer have to do if the students can like use tools themselves, so they can reserve their very valuable time for teaching skills and other things that are like ethics or other such important topics that technology still can't cover. So it'll be like better use of their time. And I think that the second point is the kids would be more they would basically be upskilled because these are going to be like our digital and remote workforce of tomorrow, so they are going to build these skills much early on. So that's like a positive. The second kind of like bucket is adaptive learning is something that everyone's been talking about for a long time, but I think this is actually a great time to go big with that, because it's going to help learning not being driven by the median student, but it can actually like help kids adapt and like learn what's most relevant for them. And then the last one is, because of the switch to virtual learning, there's so much good quality educational content that's now available online, and there's more that literally everyone's working on to make available. That's going to help students, teachers everywhere, like not just in any country. It's going to help teachers and students everywhere. And I think Vandana alluded to this, but Google has launched something called career certificates for high demand fields. So there's these new innovative things like, these that companies are trying out, which will give students flexibility to actually pick and choose subjects of interest and like build these transferable skills that they can can be like so attractive for the workforce. So yeah, those are the top three things.
Thank you. Do we have time, Marcela, for one more or two more? We have two questions queued up. One more?
Yeah, if the answers are small, then two more is fine.
Okay, maybe back to you, Vandana, because it's about higher ed. It's from our own ASCI, Joel and Lakia. How do you see the colleges continuing with their long-term research projects when students are not on the campus? You want to unmute yourself, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to tie this in together with another question I see from Vineet, which is about anti-fragility, because I believe that all of these tie together. Essentially, where we are heading is, I believe that this is an opportunity for us. Yes, there are challenges with COVID, but it's an opportunity. And I am specifically talking about higher ed, where, as I mentioned during my talk portion, that we have been a sort of dormant big gorilla. We tried to disrupt a few years ago, about a decade ago. We did not. We've been slowly moving in that direction, and really COVID is getting us in that direction. So to address both the questions, what we need to be doing, what we are finding is, one, that faculty who in the past have said no to even teaching online, they are totally into this. They are in fact figuring out ways of improving the teaching. So that's one. We know that it can be done. We know that it can be done well. Two, we're learning about many technologies that already existed. So for example, I came across a technology called Remo, which has been widely used by Amazon for virtual networking. And it can be used in the classroom. Students are looking for that immersive experience to be able to work together. So those technologies exist. ClassLink is another one. There are several technologies that do exist that are coming to the forefront today, and colleges are beginning to explore how they fit into the spectrum, how they fit in and help. So whether it is for teaching or for doing research online, research together, there are some entities where research together will be easier than others. Those that use labs, it's much harder because they require people to go there in person. But that those that do mostly software are able to continue to work from home, and they're really continuing to work at the same pace as before. But these technologies, just like for teaching, will make it easier. They just need to be brought in and they need to be incorporated. That's one part. The second part is about the anti-fragility, and that also ties in with this. I believe that this is an opportunity for us, and therefore let's take advantage of it. And I'm already seeing that higher ed institutions are creating new strategic plans to be able to sort of figure out ways in which how they can build up a more robust sector, which will not disrupt when the next pandemic happens or when the next financial downturn happens.
Thank you. I think we went through most of the questions, and thank you for all your insights. It was because we had a lot of comments, and you probably went through them. We didn't have time to read through all of them, but everybody's thanking. Most of the attendees have appreciated your insights. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Muthu, and thank you, Vandana, Sarala, Sayali. It was lovely having you all here and getting your expertise and insights on all the topics. Thank you to everyone who joined us. I know it's very late in India, and plenty of people have joined from India as well, so thank you for that. If you have any additional questions or would like to connect directly with ASEI, you can go to our website, www.aseiusa.org. You can see there are upcoming webinars in October, the next one on October 10th, how engineers can be successful in product management. Do join us if you can. So looking forward to meeting you all once again. Thank you for your time and have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Shout out for Vatsala in this all women engineers presentations today.
Yes, we are getting there. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity, Vandana, Vatsala, and Sayali. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks to Vandana for connecting Sarala and Sayali with me. Great.
And
great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. It was very good. Thank you. Bye.